Hi guys, hope you're doing well. Gerund and infinitive. This is the lesson of this video. It's dedicated for second year Bacheloria students. So let's learn about gerund and infinitive. Now, gerund here. What is a gerund? A gerund is simply a noun formed from a verb. As an example, make becomes making, exercise, exercising, put, putting, travel, traveling, stop, stopping. Good. So this is a gerund. We put an ing. So a gerund is a verb plus ing. Let's go to infinitive. What is an infinitive? An infinitive is a verb in its original form. As an example, here we have, this is an infinitive: to have, to do, to make, to travel. Now, how we use them in sentences and statements. Let's study these examples and see how we use both forms. For example, in this statement here, Majid suggested going to Titwan instead of Tangier. Here we have suggested going. Now the question is, why shouldn't we, for example, write here, Majid suggested to go, not going? It's easy because what decides on that is this verb. So this verb requires a gerund, not an infinitive. So suggest goes with a gerund, not with an infinitive. That's why we say Majid suggested going, not to go. The same goes here. For example, the teachers decided to go on a strike. So decided needs an infinitive, not a gerund. Okay? The governor refused to listen. Refuse goes with an infinitive, and stops goes with working. So why using a gerund in a sentence and not an infinitive, and vice versa? It's easy. It's all about these verbs. Okay? For example, suggest and stop require a gerund. Okay? And decide and refuse require an infinitive. So suggest plus gerund, stop plus gerund, decide plus infinitive, and refuse plus infinitive. Let's go straight to infinitive and gerund. So there are some verbs that can be followed either by a gerund or an infinitive, not like the ones that we saw. It's another type of verbs that can be either followed by an infinitive or a gerund. So they accept both forms. Okay? So for example, love, we can write here, we can use it, I love eating pizza, or you can say I love to eat pizza. It's the same. No change in meaning, right? It's the same. The same goes for number 4 and 3. So I began learning English 4 years ago. I began to learn English 4 years ago. The same. So with the verb love and begin, they need, or they can be written, can be used with both forms, gerund or infinitive. Now there is another type that we can use both, but the problem is that there is a change in meaning whenever we do that. For example, remember closing or remember to close, right? With the verb remember, if I say, for example, I remember closing the door, it means that you have the memory of that action. That action happened in the past and you remember it. Okay, you say, I remember closing the door, which means I closed the door. The second one, I remember to close the door. Now, in this statement, it's another story. The meaning is not the same as the first, because if you say I remember to close the door, it means that while you were doing something, an idea came to your mind to close the door, and then you closed it. For example, you are in the house, you were doing something, and for example, you want to go to sleep, and then you remembered to close the door and then you closed it and then you went to sleep, right? So remember to close the door. For example, you can say that you were walking down the street and you remember to bring some bread from the shop, and you went to the shop and you brought the bread and then you went to the house. Okay, so it's not like the first one. The first one you have the memory of doing that, and the second one you remember, which means that you needed to do that action after that. All right, so for number 3, I regretted informing you and I regret to inform you are totally different. If you say I regretted informing you about the whole plan, it means that you wish you hadn't have informed him about the story, which means that you feel bad about that. All right, so you say I regretted informing you about that. I regretted telling you the truth because you don't accept truth. So I regretted that. I wish I hadn't done this. I wish I hadn't said this. Okay, but for the fourth one, I regret to inform you, it means that you feel sorry. Okay, if you want to say, for example, to break a news or to say somebody a news which is bad. Okay, as for the fourth one, it's something different, right? Because if you say I regret to inform you, it means you feel sorry to say something, especially a bad news, right? You have a bad news and you want to say it to somebody, and you see you have to say, you know what, I regret to tell you this, but somebody had an accident or something. It's a bad news, right? So the one in the first, and then I regretted informing you with a gerund and I regret to inform you with the infinitive are different in meaning. So as you can see, there are some verbs when we change the verb that comes after them, either a gerund or an infinitive, the meaning changes simply. Prepositions. In English, an infinitive can be put after a preposition. Therefore, a preposition is often followed by a gerund. For example, I'm thinking about going to Agadir. Here we have a preposition, as you can see. After this preposition comes a gerund. So after all prepositions, whenever you find a preposition, please put a gerund. He's good at another preposition, playing chess. So here we have gerund again. You can make a progress without is another preposition, and you have to put gerund. Of course, prepositions are many. I can give you some of them. For example, on, in, at, with, about, up, down. All these are prepositions. Number 6, expressions. There are some fixed expressions that can be followed either by a gerund or an infinitive, but these expressions should be memorized or learned by heart, because there is no rule that tells you to put this and not that. So these are some expressions. I will give you a list of other expressions so that you can look at them and try to have at least half of them. For example, I look forward to. This to is not the to of an infinitive. This to is part of this expression. It's a fixed expression. It can be looked at as a preposition. That's why we put here a gerund. So I look forward to seeing you. So whenever you have look forward to, you have to put a gerund. So this is a fixed expression that should be memorized, that should be learned by heart. Okay? You are going to look maybe to find it in the exam, maybe. So you need to know that what comes after it is gerund, not an infinitive. I can't stand watching. So after you can't stand, after this expression, you have to put a gerund. As for can afford, you can see here it's an infinitive. So with can afford or afford, you have to put an infinitive. Fed up of doing, capable of running. So there are some expressions that can be either used with a gerund or an infinitive.